Hi-ho, hotheads! This is Aparna Nancerla back again with stories that would make public radio listeners blush. And hey, today's story is about sex and the multiverse. Sex, I think you have an idea about. Birds, drones, flowers, moans, you know, the usual. The multiverse, well, it's the idea that there are many other universes, perhaps an infinite number of them, which could contain infinite other versions of you. So there's a universe in which you're a doctor, or have green hair, or you're a handbag, or maybe you're exactly like you and have lived the exact same life, but this version of you really loves black licorice for some reason. Scientists will tell you that the multiverse probably isn't real, yet it's a crucial plot point in every single Marvel movie. And like the Marvel multiverse, our story today also has pretty high stakes. It's about marriage and love and the path not taken. The story was written by Erin Somers. She has a novel, Stay Up with Hugo Best, and has been published in the Paris Review, the New Yorker, and elsewhere. This particular story, 10-Year Affair, was chosen for the Best American Short Stories collection of 2022. Somers' writing is funny and charming, and we start to imagine the story as a gentle fiasco that Lori Moore or Ann Beatty might indulge. One of those stories of drunken marital strife that would fit right in at the New Yorker. But this story is not going where you think it's going, which, that's what we want out of a story. It was read at our night highlighting stories from that book and hosted by the Pulitzer-winning Andrew Sean Greer. Reading the story is Holly Hunter. Yes, that one. She is, of course, a veteran whose career spans movies, including broadcast news and the piano, to recent stories such as Succession and Mr. Mayor. Oh, before we get into it, I need to issue our warning for those with sensitive ears. Warning. To borrow language from old R-rated movies, this story contains sexual situations. Also, the word fuckhead, which is an objectively fun word. And that's that. Stick around after the story as I'm going to talk with the author about high-concept storytelling. But before we hear the story, let's listen to this year's Best American Guest Editor, Andrew Sean Greer, tell us why he loved it.
Our final piece tonight is by Erin Somers. She has a novel, Stay Up, Hugo Best, and has been published in the Paris Review, the New Yorker, and elsewhere. And I wasn't just looking for wacky stories, I want to make that clear. I was looking for wacky stories that were honest and emotional, because I think the Funhouse Mirror way in which all of these stories are told is the actual world. And for a moment, reading a story, we glimpse the other possibilities of ways to understand our lives.
And now, here is Holly Hunter performing 10-Year Affair by Erin Somers.
10-Year Affair. Cora met Sam in a baby group in their small town. They sat on blue plastic mats in the back room of an overpriced children's clothing store. Their infant squirmed in front of them on sheepskins. The room smelled like breast milk and baby heads and cruciferous vegetables boiled down to weakened mealy fibers that one mom brought in Tupperware and was trying to feed her 10-month-old. That baby doesn't want broccoli, said Sam. He had a toothpick stuck to his lower lip. His mouth was sexy. The toothpick was not. He offered one to Cora. She took it so she could touch his hand. It tasted like cinnamon. Of all the available affectations, this one was openly oral, wholly about his lips and tongue, either keeping them busy or drawing attention to them. So which one was it? She asked him. Neither, he said. Now he was using his to prod his incisors at the gum line. It's just something to do, to be a man and kill time chewing a wet stick. Across the room, the weeping child ingested a bite from the Tupperware, and her mother crawled out triumphantly, "See? It was the two of them against broccoli, Mom, that much was clear." They exchanged numbers to seal the alliance. The purpose was to text when they'd be at baby group, but soon they started meeting elsewhere. They passed the long afternoons of parental leave that way. Her husband knew and did not seem to mind. They'd get a coffee or sometimes a beer at one of the places on Main Street, and after, they'd push their babies uphill toward the dark green mountain that stood at the top of the town. Maybe because they had young children and were used to talking plainly about birth and shit and blood and bodies and the potential of death, their talk was frank. They were both married, both with a second kid, but spoke candidly about their desire for each other. They could not sleep together because their motivations were not perfectly aligned. They overlapped but were not concentric. This was insurmountable. Cora wanted to fuck Sam. It was physical only, but had grown strong. She had no control over it. She became a slavering animal in his presence. She told him this one afternoon, a few months into their acquaintance, on a stretch of sharp incline. Her quads burned and she panted slightly. He laughed. "I shouldn't have told you," said Cora. "No, I'm glad you did. It's the way you put it." Sam wanted her too, he explained, but there was nothing animal about it. It had more to do with liking Cora as a person. He would not cop to love. Cora found it hard to believe that it was merely about liking her. Liking was a mild way to feel. Did he want to fuck everything he liked? His computer, grapefruit seltzer, a scattering of ducks on a pond where he wasn't expecting to see ducks? He said, "You're attracted to me, I get that, but you don't seem to like me much. What is the emphasis on liking all the time? Well, don't you have feelings?" She had feelings. The feelings were that she wanted to get fucked onto the astral plane and not think about her life for a second. But this clearly wasn't the right thing to say, so she reached into the feelings bag and yanked out, I'm crazy about you. Sure, why not? It was bland, liking adjacent. It was not necessarily a declaration of love, but he accepted it. Okay, but can't we be friends? It's sad to me, the idea of not knowing you. If I wanted a new friend, I'd find a woman, no offense. So if we can't be friends, what are we supposed to do, he said, have a 10-year affair? They were silent. Their generation did not take off its clothes, did not put its keys in a bowl by the front door. Sex between women and men had become taboo in their generation, where everyone was striving, not incorrectly, to be an equal. Even the word affair had the ring of obsolescence, like a cigarette or an ad man or chaise lounge. "I'm kidding," he said at last. But the affair was there now. It was between them. Somewhere in the multiverse, their alternates checked into a hotel room where the afternoon light came in at a slant and hit a champagne bucket just so. It was a cliche, but wild and enjoyable because it was happening to them, this mythic thing they'd heard about, this thing in quotes, an affair. Two vectors ran parallel through Cora's existence. One was what you might call reality, with bills and an ant problem in the kitchen, and her marriage, which was mostly good. The other was her affair with Sam, technically fictional. Its lies and illicit meetings, the racing pulse of infatuation. Sometimes one was more present than the other. When one of her kids got sick, the affair was suspended for almost a week. She went back to work, and this took precedence for a while, until the old routines kicked in. The small talk and 2 p.m. granola bar, the rote cheer of email communication. Other times, the affair was the more prominent of the two, in moments of boredom, in waiting rooms, on transit. But mostly, they stayed in balance. So Cora sat in a mind-numbing meeting as she met Sam in a darkened steakhouse. She made a suggestion about SEO while they each drank an ice-cold martini. There was coffee in the meeting, at least, a big bitter carafe of it, and she refilled her cup as she reached for his cock under the table. Sam brushed back her hair from her ear, whispered something, and her boss rapped his knuckles on the conference table, made a dumb joke about the moment everybody had been waiting for, and brought it around to monthly stats. As she boiled water for pasta, she walked with Sam through a rainstorm. She tripped, and he caught her coming off a street corner while she put her children to bed. During the hour-long drama that she watched with her husband, she was blowing Sam in the back of his car. While she was running out to pick up milk, so she could meet him in the dairy aisle of ShopRite and have him furtively put his hand up her skirt for 30 seconds before heading home. And as she tweezed her eyebrows, looked up whale facts with her kids, fed herself or other people, picked up toys, answered work emails at 10 p.m., ran on a treadmill, locked herself in the bathroom for no reason she could immediately determine, she thought of him. She thought of him always, in both timelines. In one, it was with longing and despair. In the other one was longing and regret. She longed for him while she longed for him. She yearned while she yearned. She pined while she pined, and so on. Sam called her, in reality, after several weeks of not seeing each other, and they met up for a drink. He had gone back to work, too. He looked handsome and unhappy, in office casual. He'd learned a new trick with his toothpick. He used his tongue to flip it over the long way. He had to stretch his mouth wide open to do it. She willed him to touch her, and he didn't. He began immediately with the intense conversation. He had not enjoyed their time apart. He had thought of her often. He was suffering. Since they could not have sex, he said, he wanted a legitimate way to know her. He wanted to install her in his life. He wanted a permanent fixture. Sounds like what you really want is a sink, she said. You have a great personality, he said. You know that? Her whole life, people had railed on about her personality. Such a smart such a smart woman. And funny, and it got worse, better, as she got older. Kind, empathetic, good parent. Well, that was nice, right? That's what you want, right? But couldn't this one man objectify her? Okay, she said. I'm serious. I think all four of us should hang out. My wife, your husband. Does your wife know how we talk to each other? It's not impossible that I'll tell her. I try to be honest with her. So you want me to be friends with her, but she'll just know? It'll just be out there that I'm a slavering animal, self-described? They stared at each other. He attempted to do the toothpick trick and choked and half puked it out. In the other timeline, they were laughing at a joke that one of them had made. In the other timeline, his hand was on her thigh and no one had just sort of thrown up. Her hair looked better over there, too. How about instead of all that, I send you one nude, said Cora. Sam laughed. No, just one, a tasteful one, not too porny. I want to have you as a friend, he said again. Have her, have. Someone already had her, though. Her husband, Elliot. She said to Elliot later, standing in the kitchen, to what degree do you feel like you have me? He was eating, as usual, smearing an apple with almond butter and taking big demonstrative bites. Like, possess you? Yeah, 0, he said. No, but you do. Long pause while he smeared and bit. Not really. You do. I have obligations to you. You have access to me. I exist to you on certain terms. I'm your wife. You have me. You get to have me. I don't think about it like that. How do you think about it? We're best friends. We have 2 kids together. I enjoy being around you. You're fun. We both elect to be here. You're saying you like me. Exactly. Yo, hand me one of those. He meant a napkin. She gave him a look. She was nursing the baby. Their oldest daughter sat on her foot playing with a Barbie. Not because you're my property, because you're right there. God, fine, I'll get it. Elliot retrieved a napkin. I don't possess you. I'm fine with you hanging out with that guy from the baby group, whatever's going on there. Nothing's going on with Sam, said Cora. She had to look away. It hurt a lot to say it. She gave in. They had Sam and his wife over for dinner. The wife's name was Jules, and she had no apparent bad traits except that she allowed the toothpicks. She even took one herself after dinner. When Sam offered them around, Elliot took one too. They sat in Cora's yard, sucking their wood splinters, drinking wine, talking about pre-K. In the timeline that contained their affair, Sam and Cora were alone. The leaves in the yard were a dark blue, previously only seen in dreams. The strap of Cora's dress fell off her shoulder, and Sam kissed the place it had been. In reality, Sam was shouting about school registration, how you had to go visit this 80-year-old woman, Rose, in her office full of dying plants and make a case for why your kid should be assigned your school of choice. Wasn't that quaint? And the reason all of them had moved out there? That was our vision, all right, said Cora. She rose on the pretext of grabbing the cobbler. Elliot glanced at her. There was no cobbler. She went in and climbed the stairs and stood in front of the bedroom window and watched the three of them talking and laughing. Night crawled diagonally across the yard. Where their affair was going on, she and Sam had adjourned to the bedroom to try to shock each other with their respective depravities. She found that she was chewing a toothpick herself. And she spit it out on the floor and then picked it up and threw it away in the bathroom trash. She checked on the baby and the baby and the other baby and the other baby. Two were sleeping and two were playing sweetly with a train that linked up using magnets. She sat down with them and made up a story about how the train had left the land of chores and rules for the land of toys and candy. The children were easy to delight. Sam came in and stood behind her, resting his hand lightly on her head. Even this level of contact elicited a full-body reaction, and he must have done that. He said, "It's going well, right? Jules likes you. I told you." Another admirer. How their ranks swelled. They could erect a monument to her in the town square, an extremely fucking likable woman. That's what the plaque would say. Great, great, said Cora. I like her too. 10 years passed in both worlds, in all worlds. In the timeline of the affair, Cora's affection deepened, and she admitted she was in love. The sex never got old. Sam quit the toothpicks. In late summer, they walked in the park, and a doe with white-tipped ears came over and nuzzled Sam in the leg and laid her soft snout in Cora's hand. They drank too much wine that night and conceived a baby. Oops. And this led to weeks of wrenching conversation. He said he wanted a baby with Cora. He wanted a baby with her. Of course he did. But was it ethical or responsible? Was it cool to ruin the lives of 6 existing people to produce one new person with their shared genes? She said, maybe not cool. She said, no. But she wanted it. And you could want something bad enough that you needed it. You could want something so bad it became indivisible from your survival. You'll survive, he said. They decided to terminate. Over on the other side, their kids got older. They haggled with Rose to keep them in the same class. The two families went on vacation together. Cora enjoyed Jules' company. They made each other laugh. Jules was better than her at most things: sports, cooking, career advancement, and this felt good to Cora, the way it felt good to tongue a canker sore. Occasionally, the vectors veered closer together. She was walking home from the library one day when Sam pulled up beside her in his car. He said, "You're always walking around town. You're the lady that walks around town." She got in and they drove up the mountain. When she asked where they were going, he said, "Not sure." She felt a shiver, the brush of the uncanny against her cheek. This exact thing would happen in the other timeline. In fact, it was happening over there with minor differences. Sam stopped at an overlook. A breeze came in the open window that smelled sweetly of the ground. The town spread out before them, red and brown and gray rooftops, sloping down toward a river slashed with sunlight. It seemed like a makeout spot. Cora turned to Sam. Sam put his head on the steering wheel. "Read to me from that book you have, whatever it is," he said. It was a book that she'd gotten for her daughter, Butterflies and Moths of North America. She opened to a random page and read, "In the second stage of the life cycle, the larva hatches from the egg." Okay, stop. Stop. Well, what were you expecting? I don't know. Poetry or something. Did he think she took romantic strolls down to the library to check out books of poetry? Was he picturing her doing that when he pictured her? "It's for homework," she said, "insect unit." "You're a great mom," he said. It's pretty baseline. It's picking up a book. He gave her the kind of look that usually precedes a passionate gesture. His hands were shaking. He rubbed them on his jeans. Since they'd known each other, there had been no incidents of sexual contact between them, though the restraint this required was itself quasi-sexual. "We should go," he said. He started the car. They left. At the end of 10 years, Sam shocked them all by asking Jules for a divorce. Cora heard it from Jules first. "An idiot fuckhead's on the way to your house," she said over the phone. Sam came to Cora in her backyard. She was kicking a soccer ball with her kid. The one who'd been a baby when they met was 10 now. And he kicked the ball at him. It hit him in the stomach. He said, "Ow." Then he launched into a monologue about how she should leave Elliot. He loved her as a friend, but he also wanted her physically. He always had. The two vectors aligned, snapping into place. With only one timeline in motion, it was profoundly quiet. Her older kid said, "What the fuck?" And Cora had to go through the theater of disapproval. "Don't say fuck, that's rude." Meanwhile, Sam stood, waiting for an answer. She sent the kids inside. "I want to marry you," he said. Marry? Marriage had never been the point. Marriage was the opposite of the point. Anyway, in the world of the affair, things had not been the same between them since the abortion. On the day of her appointment, he wanted to be there, but he'd agreed to chaperone his kid's field trip to the state capitol. She thought she would be fine, but she wasn't. She sat in recovery alone. How could he have left her sitting there like that? She pictured him listening politely to a tour guide, helping to distribute bagged lunches. It made her lonely. Obligations were not for the world of the affair. Albany, New York, was not. Municipalities, the halls of legislation. She knew she could not say this out loud. She knew her imaginings within imaginings would not translate the way quotidian pain and disappointment had bled through to her fantasy life, would not be explicable to this man who chewed toothpicks, or probably to anyone. "You made me wait too long," she said finally. "I'm sorry," he said. Sam reached out to touch her arm. His touch was hot. She felt an internal revving, but it was distant, or she thought if she wanted to, she could will it to be distant. She considered accepting his offer to see what would happen. Various vectors appeared, like tines on a fork. He'd be a great husband, and they'd be in love forever. He'd be terrible, and she'd instantly regret it. She'd cheat on him with Elliot, casually, and for decades. Or, by some calculation, she and Jules would end up together. They'd pick a random state on the map, Utah, say, and move there with all 4 kids. She must have been quiet a long time because he said, "What are you thinking?" Well, this startled her. What an invasion. "None of your business," she said. Really, it had almost nothing to do with him. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk about your story today. I really loved it, and it was so funny. Do you mind telling our listeners how you first hit on the central conceit, just this imagined relationship kind of running parallel to a real relationship?
When I sat down to write, I didn't know that the story was going to be structured around that conceit at all. I hadn't thought of it. I just had like the phrase 10-year affair stuck in my head for some reason. And it sort of intrigued me and made me curious. And so I just sat down and started writing the first section, and the voice came to me instantly. It was going pretty well. And then I didn't even know the conceit. It was going to involve the conceit until I got to the part where it happens. Until I hit on like the imagined affair, like until the story hits it. And then I was like, oh yeah, okay, this is of course where this is going. And then I sort of let the conceit take over. So it sort of came naturally and out of nowhere and out of the prose itself, which is a really sort of crazy process and something that has never happened to me before, where it is like completely organic and not structured around the central thing.
And as it came to you, did you have to kind of go back and re-engineer it or tinker with it to make it work exactly right? Or was it really like organic in that it just kind of naturally flowed together?
It kind of naturally flowed together. Like the first section sort of held up. It hits pretty early on. It's like at the beginning of like the second section, the conceit really kicks in. So, I went back. I don't do too many revisions of short fiction because I find it kind of like drains what is vital out of them and like what is, what makes them live. But I of course, always do like one revision, and there was some rearranging, but for the most part, it was really sort of this bizarre, organic coming together where it didn't need to be like tinkered with after the fact too much.
And this story was, well-deserved, chosen for one of the best American short stories of 2022. Did you do anything to celebrate when you found out it was picked?
I can't even remember. I'm sure I like made my husband like get a bottle of champagne or something, because like that's what we usually do. But I have a weird superstition about like over celebrating things, career success, because I always feel that like you never know if something is secretly like going to bum you out in some way or like actually like be a disaster. The like old monkey paw legend where it's like you make a wish on a monkey on the monkey's paw, and like the worst thing that can happen to you is that you get your wish, right? Because it's like your wish, but it's like a little bit off and a little bit twisted. So I always think that if I'm like too happy, I'm like headed directly into a monkey's paw situation that is like going to destroy my life in some way.
No, I find that very relatable. Always waiting for the shoe to drop, for sure.
Yeah.
And your story was performed by Holly Hunter. Of course, that's who we heard reading the story. And you got to speak with her before she read it. Did you give her any advice or like insight into it before she did the reading?
Yeah. So she was amazing, obviously. And she wanted to talk to me beforehand and talk through some of the story beats and the character motivation, which I was, of course, massively intimidated by because she's like brilliant and amazing and Holly Hunter. And so it was like, it was almost as if she wanted a little direction from me. And I had to like set aside my massive intimidation and, talk to her about it. And it was really great. She actually made me realize things about this story that I hadn't seen before. And she was really insightful about the main character. And she's just all around a brilliant woman. So it was a dream to talk to her.
Yeah. And what was it like hearing your story out loud?
It's always weird to hear someone else reading it because it's like not quite, the way you hear it in your head when you're writing it.
Right.
So I was nervous about that going in, like, what if, I don't know, just like what if it's different, or what if it sounds wrong to me? But as my sister told me, it's like, Holly Hunter is an Oscar winner and she knows what she's doing. So even if it sounds different to you, it's like gonna sound awesome to everyone else. And of course she was right. She got laughs where there wasn't even a laugh on the page. Like her delivery is amazing. It's different than it was in my head, but it's like she breathed a new life into it that I hadn't seen. And she brought her own self and specialness to it. And so it was really wonderful.
You also, among your many other talents besides writing incredible short stories, you have a novel called Stay Up with Hugo Best, which is about a struggling writer's assistant with a crush on an aging, womanizing late night host. Is this based in any nugget of reality of a similar crush on a late night host, or what was the impetus that maybe took you in this direction?
It's sort of really like the opposite, which is that was sort of born of fascination with Jay Leno and how opaque I find him. Like, I find him to be almost all public persona without really, I don't really I find it hard to see the real person there. It just made me really curious about what is Jay Leno really like? Like, what would it be like to spend a weekend with Jay Leno, and what would it be to try to get to know Jay Leno in a one-on-one scenario? And then what would it be like for a person, a person with no, career status, or a person like myself, just like an ordinary person, to spend a weekend with a very famous comedian like this. And my first thought is it would be an interpersonal disaster, and there would be some comedy there and some pathos. So yeah, it was sort of actually born of an anti-crush, just not that I'm repelled by him, but just that it made me curious that I can't see what makes him tick.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because in thinking about him, I'm like, yeah, I really feel like I don't get more than what he's kind of putting out there.
Right? Yeah, he's just got a very polished and opaque public persona. And I don't know, I think it just fascinated me, the idea of trying to connect with a person like that, who has been in the public eye for so many years. And I just thought that it would be difficult for a normal person.
So I guess just one last question. Our listeners are all big short story fans and readers. We always like to ask our authors for just a recommendation, maybe a writer or just a story that might be more off the beaten path for people to check out.
Yeah, there's this book called Bobcat. It's a short story collection by Rebecca Lee, and it's extremely wonderful. Every short story is funny and warm and brilliant and, full of excellent writing. So Bobcat by Rebecca Lee is something I recommend to people all the time.
Awesome. Well, that's all the questions I had. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Awesome. Thank you.
Our show is produced by Jennifer Brennan and Mary Shimkin. Our podcast producer and editor is Colleen Palacier. This episode was recorded by Miles B. Smith. Matthew Love is our consulting producer. Our theme song is by Poddington Bear. I'm Aparna Nancerla. Thanks for joining us for Selected Shorts Too Hot for Radio.